بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ السلام علیکم۔ ڈاکٹر منور حسین آپ کے پیش خدمت ہے۔ عید کا دن گزرا، بہت اچھا دن الحمدللہ، آپ کو بہت بہت عید مبارک ہو۔ آج کا ٹاپک ہمارا اگین ایران امریکہ اسرائیل جنگ ہے، لیکن اس دفعہ کسی پاکستانی کا پرسپیکٹو نہیں، امریکہ کا پرسپیکٹو ہے۔ امریکہ سے انتہائی سیزنڈ جرنلسٹ جن کا نام ارک ہے، اور انہوں نے 7 انٹرنیشنل میڈیا آؤٹلیٹس میں کام کیا ہے، پولیٹیکل اسٹریٹجسٹ ہیں، انٹرنیشنل میڈیا اور پاکستانی میڈیا پہ اپیئر ہوتے ہیں۔ انہوں نے اسلام آباد ٹیلی گراف اور دا ریپبلک نیوز کے اندر بھی کام کیا ہوا ہے۔ ان سے انٹرویو لیں گے اور سمجھنے کی کوشش کریں گے 4 سے 5 سوال کہ کیا امریکہ کے لوگ اس جنگ کی نوعیت کو سمجھتے ہیں اور ان کی پرسیپشن کیا ہے، اور پولیٹیکل لائنز پر یہ پرسیپشن کیا ویری کرتی ہے، ریپبلکنز کیا سوچ رہے ہیں، ڈیموکریٹس کیا سوچ رہے ہیں۔ دوسرا سوال یہ کہ اس کا اینڈ گیم کیا ہے وار کا، بیکاز ولی نصر، جان میر شائمر، اسکاٹ ریٹر اور پراوین ساہنی، جن کے کچھ چیزیں میں آپ کے سامنے رکھوں گا، وہ اس وار کو امریکہ کے ہاتھ سے نکلتے ہوئے دیکھتے ہیں۔ وہ سمجھتے ہیں کہ وار کی چابی اس وقت ایران کے ہاتھ میں ہے، اور ایران نے امریکہ کے گلے سے امریکہ کو دبوچا ہوا ہے۔ جب تک خود ایران نہیں چھوڑے گا، امریکہ کا گلا آزاد نہیں ہوگا۔ اسی طرح سے کیا یہ جنگ امریکہ کے جو 3 تاریخی مقاصد ہیں فارن پالیسی کے، خارجہ پالیسی کے، انہیں سرو کرتا ہے، جس کے اندر سیکیورٹی ہے، اکنامک پراسپیرٹی ہے، پروموشن آف امریکن آئیڈیلز ہیں۔ اور چوتھا سوال یہ کہ جو تلسی گبارڈ ہے، جنہوں نے سینٹ کی کمیٹی کے سامنے انٹیلیجنس رپورٹ رکھی، جس میں انہوں نے چائنا، رشیا، نارتھ کوریا، ایران اور پاکستان کے میزائل پروگرام کے بارے میں بات کرتے ہوئے کہا کہ یہ امریکہ کی ہوم لینڈ سیکیورٹی کو خطرہ ہے، اور اسپیشلی پاکستان کے حوالے سے جو اس کا شائن 3 ہے وہ اپنی رینج کو بڑھا رہا ہے۔ اب اس میں جو انٹر کانٹیننٹل میزائل سسٹم ہے، جسے IBCM کہا جاتا ہے، وہ تقریباً 55,000 کلومیٹر سے اوپر ہوتا ہے، جبکہ پاکستان کی جو شائن کی رینج ہے وہ 2,500 کلومیٹر ہے، اور ایکسکلوسیولی ہمارا ڈیفنس پرپزز کے لیے۔ اور جہاں پہ سوال یہ اٹھتا ہے کہ جو اگنی 6 ہے، اگنی 4 بھی تقریباً 4,000 کلومیٹر تک اس کی رینج ہے، لیکن اگنی 6 کی 12,000 کلومیٹر رینج ہے۔ تو اس پہ تلسی گبارڈ کیوں نہیں آواز اٹھا رہی؟ کیا یہ پاکستان کے اوپر پریشر ڈالنے کے مترادف ہے؟ یہ وہ سوالات ہیں جو ہم ان کے سامنے رکھیں گے، لیکن اس سے پہلے چند گزارشات۔ سب سے پہلے یہ کہ امریکہ نے اور اسرائیل نے اس جنگ کا آغاز کیا، لیکن اب جنگ کب ختم ہوگی اور یہ غبار کیسے بیٹھے گا، یہ ان کے ہاتھ میں نہیں ہے، یہ ایران کے اس وقت ہاتھ میں ہے۔ مثال کے طور پہ پراوین ساہنی کا یہ خیال ہے کہ اسٹریٹجک، آپریشنل، ٹیکٹیکل اور انفارمیشن کی فیلڈ میں امریکہ جنگ شکست خوردہ طور پہ اس جنگ میں ابھرا ہے۔ اسی طریقے سے جان میر شائمر کا، جو کہ نیو ریئلزم کے موجود ہیں اور شکاگو یونیورسٹی کے تھیورسٹ ہیں، بلکہ 21 سنچری میں جو آفینسو ریئلزم ہے اس کے بانی سمجھے جاتے ہیں اور سب سے بڑے تھیورسٹ سمجھے جاتے ہیں، ان کا خیال یہ ہے کہ امریکہ کے وائٹ ہاؤس میں بیٹھے ہوئے لوگ احمقانہ ہیں اور وہ کلہاڑی سے اپنے ہی پاؤں کو زخمی کر رہے ہیں۔ اس کے ساتھ ساتھ جو اسکاٹ ریٹر ہیں، ان کا خیال بھی ہے کہ ایران کے پاس تو مکمل گیم پلان ہے، لیکن امریکہ اور اسرائیل کے پاس کوئی گیم پلان نہیں ہے۔ امریکہ اور اسرائیل نے اپنی چوائس کے اوپر سرپرائز اٹیک کیا ایران کے اوپر، لیکن گیم یہاں پہ ختم نہیں ہوتی۔ اب وہ یہاں سے بھاگنا چاہتے ہیں، نکلنا چاہتے ہیں، اور ان کو راستہ نہیں ملتا۔ ایران انہیں کہتا ہے آپ نے جو کرنا تھا کر لیا، لیکن ابھی میں نے مکمل نہیں کیا۔ تو لہٰذا اس وقت جو انٹینسٹی ہے وار کی، وہ ایران کے ہاتھ میں ہے۔ واشنگٹن پوسٹ نے یہ خبر شائع کی، رپورٹ شائع کی کہ اسرائیل ایگزٹ ریمپ یعنی نکلنے کا راستہ تلاش کر رہا ہے، بیکاز جنگ شدت اختیار کر رہی ہے اور خطے تک پھیل گئی ہے، اور گلوبل اکانومی پہ اس کے منفی اثرات پڑ رہے ہیں۔ امریکہ کے لیے بھی امبیرسمنٹ ہے، بیکاز 24 گھنٹوں میں کل کے دن 2 F-35 طیارے مار گرائے گئے ہیں، جبکہ امریکنز کا خیال ہے کہ وہ زخمی حالت میں اترے ہیں غالباً UAE کے ایئر بیس کے اوپر، لیکن یہ دنیا کا جدید ترین طیارہ ہے، مہنگا ترین طیارہ ہے، اور یہ اسٹیلتھ ٹیکنالوجی سے لیس ہے، جس کو ریڈار پہ دیکھا نہیں جا سکتا۔ یہ کمال ہے کہ ایران نے یہ کس طرح انہیں ہٹ کیا ہے، اور یہی وجہ ہے کہ چائنیز جو ہیں ٹیم ایران پہنچ چکی ہے اور اس کو اسٹڈی کریے کہ یہ چائنیز نے کس طرح سے اسے ٹریک کیا ہے۔ آئی آر جی سی کی جو ٹارگیٹنگ گائیڈنس ہے اس میں بھی ہمیں جدت نظر آ رہی ہے۔ جو اولڈ ان کے یعنی پرانے جو میزائل تھے انہوں نے فائر کر دی ہیں، اب وہ اور ان فائر کیے ہوئے میزائلوں سے انہوں نے جو اسرائیل کا ایئر ڈیفنس سسٹم تھا اور امریکہ کا اور ارلی وارننگ ریڈار سسٹم تھا اسے انہوں نے کرپل کر دیا ہے۔ اب اسرائیل جو ایران کے آنے والے میزائل ہیں ان کو روک نہیں پا رہا، اور اس میں اب ایران 1 ٹن وزنی والے جو ایکسپلوسو سے بھرپور مواد والے میزائل ہیں انہیں اسرائیل پہ بھیج رہا ہے۔ اس میں مثال کے طور پہ عماد ہے، سجیل ہے، خرم شہر ہے، اور سجیل کے لیے تو ڈانسنگ میزائل کہا جا رہا ہے کہ یہ جب جاتا ہے اور جب اس نے ٹارگیٹ کو اچیو کرنا ہوتا ہے تو اس سے پہلے یہ کئی اپنی سمتیں کئی دفعہ تبدیل کرتا ہے، جس سے ایئر ڈیفنس سسٹم کے آنے والے میزائلوں کو یہ دھوکہ دینے میں کامیاب ہوتا ہے، جیسے آئرن ڈوم اور ڈیوڈ سلنگ وغیرہ۔ اب مسئلہ یہ ہے کہ اسرائیل جو ایران ہے وہ چھوٹے وار ہیڈ لے کر جنگ نہیں کر رہا، اس کا دور ختم ہو گیا ہے۔ اب وہ بڑے وار ہیڈ کے ساتھ، کنونشنل وار ہیڈ کے ساتھ جو ہے وہ جنگ کر رہا ہے۔ لاسٹ پوائنٹ یہ کہ اس میں جو یو اے ای ہے اس کے بارے میں اسکاٹ ریٹر کا خیال یہ ہے کہ یو اے ای وہ بلنڈر کر رہا ہے اور اسے اندازہ نہیں ہے کہ ایران اس جنگ کو لمبا لے جا سکتا ہے، اور ایران کے لیے کہا جاتا ہے یہ لمبی ریس کا گھوڑا ہے، جبکہ امریکہ جو ہے وہ شارٹ ریس، یعنی تیز ترین گھوڑے ہیں ان کے پاس لیکن مختصر جنگ کے لیے، جتنی لمبی جنگ ہوگی ان کے فائدے میں نہیں ہے۔ تو لہٰذا اسکاٹ ریٹر کا خیال یہ ہے کہ جو یو اے ای ہے وہ بلنڈر کر رہا ہے اور اس کے نتیجے میں یو اے ای اس جی سی سی کے میپ سے غائب ہو سکتا ہے، بیکاز ایران کے پاس ہزاروں میزائل ہیں اور سینکڑوں میزائلوں کے شہر ان کے پاس آباد ہیں، اور بڑے خطرناک اور ویل ایکیوریٹڈ اور بھاری بھرکم مواد لے جانے والے میزائل ہیں، تو لہٰذا انہیں اپنی جو پالیسی ہے اس پہ نظر ثانی کرنی ہوگی۔ اور اس میں اسکاٹ ریٹر کا یہ بھی خیال ہے کہ عرب جو ممالک ہیں انہیں دیکھنا ہوگا کہ انہوں نے جو امریکن بیسیز رکھی ہوئی ہیں اس صورت میں اگر ایران کے انرجی انسٹالیشنز اور فیسلٹیز پہ لگاتار حملہ ہوتا ہے تو اس کے ریٹیلیشن میں ایران عرب جو انرجی فیسلٹیز ہیں ان کو مستقلاً ٹارگیٹ کرتا رہے گا۔ تو حملہ کیا امریکہ اور اسرائیل نے، لیکن اس کا خمیازہ اور قیمت بھریں گے جی سی سی ممالک، تو انہیں غور کرنا ہوگا کہ انہوں نے فردر پالیسی کیا لے کے چلنی ہے۔ آئیے سنتے ہیں عراق کی اپنی زبانی کہ وہ اس سارے معاملے کو کس انداز سے دیکھتے ہیں، امریکن میڈیا کس طرح دیکھ رہا ہے، امریکن لوگ اس کو کس طرح سمجھتے ہیں۔ آپ کا تعلق اٹلانٹا جارجیا سے ہے، پولیٹیکل اسٹریٹجسٹ ہیں۔ آئیے عراق کی باتیں سنتے ہیں۔ اس وقت ہمارے ساتھ ہیں عراق جو کہ سیزن جرنلسٹ ہے اٹلانٹا جارجیا سے، اور انہوں نے سرو کیا ہے اسلام آباد ٹیلی گراف کے اندر بھی، ریپبلک نیوز کے اندر بھی، اور پاکستان کے مختلف میڈیا آؤٹ لیٹس پہ اور انٹرنیشنل میڈیا آؤٹ لیٹس پہ ہمیشہ آپ اپیئر ہوتے ہیں۔ عراق، تھینک یو ویری مچ فار یور ٹائم فار آور شو، ویلکم ان آور شو۔
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you. Thank you. My first question would be, what is the popular perception in United States of America regarding this war against Iran, and how it is even perceived in American media, because media is perception maker?
Yeah. So as you've mentioned, I am in the international scene. So I've reported on these topics in several different countries. So what I've noticed in my reporting is that every news channel seems to have their own angle as to what the war is doing. So does that tell me that one's wrong over the other? No, it's just a perception kind of a situation. What are the needs of each individual country? Then you divide it into party lines left and right. We have that same issue here in the United States. The perception is going to be divided between party lines, Republican and Democrat, left and right. Most of the Democrats do not want this war, even though several years ago they all voted that the regime needed to be overturned. So it's just a dig at President Trump. I think that any chance that they get to anti-Trump, they do. On the right side, that's where the real temperature gauge is, I believe, here in the United States. We have some of the Republicans do not want this war, but a large portion of them say we're going to put our trust in our president and let him do what he feels needs to be done. I think it's an 89% Republicans want the war and about 11% don't. So it is a large majority. Independents are quite a bit lower than that. They're not really thrilled about the war. However, I do think that this has been long coming. We've seen this, and a lot of the public perception is, well, we've been dealing with Iran for a long time, and the past president's plan was just to ship them pallets of gold, and that would make it okay. This is a different strategy. It does make people on edge. We are scared of the endless war. We just finished the war in Afghanistan, which cost a lot of American lives. It cost a lot of international lives, and it was very costly on our economy. So that's something that we just finished it. We didn't really get a chance to breathe as a nation after we just finished 21 years of war in Afghanistan. Now we're into this Iran situation. However, people are pretty optimistic here about how this war is going to end. We don't feel that with the midterms coming up, a long drawn out war would destroy President Trump's midterm election plans. So we do believe that he's going to end this war before midterms, probably with enough time frame to where the economy and the oil prices will start to go back down. The economy will start to rise back up. I think that's part of the end game. I think he has a deadline that he wants to pull out by, so he's trying to, with the mass pressure strikes that we're seeing nonstop from the United States, I think that the objectives are getting close to being complete.
You talked about party lines perceptions. You are absolutely right. I mean, Republicans in majority they are supporting this war. But I mean, even some senators like Richard Blumenthal, who objected that since we don't have money to fight this war and we must not linger on this war, we don't have a way out or end game of this war. This is their perception. But even Joseph Kant, who resigned 3 days back with the resignation, he mentioned that since there was no threat from Iran and president is not listening them, even I think J.D. Vance, who has certain reservation on this war. But what is public opinion, popular opinion? You talked about the perception of the leadership of the Congress. You mentioned perception on the basis of party lines. What is a popular perception in American people? What they want?
I think as a whole, you take the party lines out. As a whole, Americans don't want to be in this situation. It's a difficult situation because, like you said, we just finished the Afghanistan war. We did not want to go into another war. And part of President Trump's success in his election was the promise of no new wars. So that is dividing people. The left is using those words against him every day in the media, like President Trump promised no new wars, and here we are in a new war. On the right, that's where some of that 11% that I talked about is coming from, where they said we were not supposed to be in any more wars, and here we are in another war. So that does hurt President Trump, making that campaign promise and not being able to fulfill it. However, we also have to live in reality that we can't predict when a conflict is going to happen. We can't predict when an opportunity presents itself in the international kind of scenario of things. And I think that's what happened. We knew that we wanted to attack Iran due to the nuclear programs, due to the ballistic missiles, which I think was more of a concern of Israel than it was of ours. I think when all of those Iranian leaders ended up in one spot, that was when President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu came together and said, this is a golden opportunity to really cripple the leadership of Iran, and they took it. Had they not all convened in the same spot, I don't believe that this war would have started, at least not now. It would have started probably later. However, the opportunity presented itself and they took advantage of it.
What is your understanding, your take on regarding this war? Does America has a grip on this war, or America is losing grip because Wali Nasser, John Mearsheimer, Scott Ritter, even Indian defense analysts like Paraveen Saini, they believe that this war is out of American hands, and even John Mearsheimer believes that there is a bunch of I mean, this is awkward word, but his own words, bunch of fools are in the White House and they are shooting their own feet.
I think it just depends on how you define winning the war, and what the initial objectives were compared to what's realistically achievable. And that does make a difference. I do believe that the ideal of Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, that the initial bombardment would have crippled Iran so much that it would have collapsed their government very quickly. However, that did not happen. So what we do is we have a course correct. And when that course correct happened and they came up with the next round of strategy, which I'm sure they had it, they knew that this was the contingency plan. Now we're in a pressure. What I see from my perspective is a pressure situation. They have constantly put pressure on the Iranian military to defend Iran's missile sites, nuclear sites. And now they announced today that we're going to be sending in the A-10 Warthogs and the Apache helicopters. So that tells me we're going into another phase of this conflict, where we're going to be seeing a more agile movement by our military personnel. We're going to be hitting tighter targets, where we have to be able to get in and out very quickly. So we're going to see another phase start to happen. I do think that there is a plan. I do think that with midterms coming up, they do have an exit strategy. I think once they feel that they have decimated enough missile launching stations, the factories that generate the missiles, the nuclear sites, I believe, and once the Strait of Hormuz is back as free flowing, we're going to see the United States start to back out of this. That would be a good opportunity to move away and say we've completed our objectives. Now we're going to go back to normal. A lot of the media are reporting that President Trump, made this regime change promise. Yeah, he's talked about it, but he's ultimately left it in the hands of the Iranian people. We're gonna achieve our targets to where they can't attack with missiles, with their neighbors or Israel. We're gonna achieve those goals. After that, once we pull back, it's going to be up to the Iranian people. We're going to really see what the real story is. Are there way more people that resist the IRGC and the Iranian government, or are they a heavy minority? So we'll see how that kind of works itself out, but it's going to ultimately be up to the Iranian people.
Eric, if we go into the history and we find the pattern and regularity in the behavior of Iranians since 1979, when they brought this cultural revolution. They call it Islamic revolution, but in my viewpoint, it's a cultural revolution. Since then, we are observing that Iranians, they are very resilient because of their civilizational character. They faced 8 years war against Iraq, and Iraq was supported by whole of the West, even the Arab countries. And they sustained under very heavy sanctions from United States of America, European Union, as well as United Nations. And we see that after this war, their regime is more stronger and people, they are openly supporting them. IRGC is more powerful, and we do not see that they are in a weakening position, because the way they are attacking with the 1,000 pounds, payloads, and they are hitting Israel especially and American bases in the region. Do you not think, there should be a way out? This war has to be ended, and it is in the favor of all parties.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. There needs to be some kind of dialogue. President Trump is saying that there are some Iranian um, department heads that are reaching out to our department heads and trying to communicate. So I think that that's a good sign. Obviously, we would it would be a much better solution to have a diplomatic ending to this war. Uh, we don't want to see another uh, school full of children get blown up or having civilian areas being targeted. Both sides are going to be guilty of all that. So we don't want to see those things. So a diplomatic solution is going to be a much better option. As to whether that happens, I'm not quite sure. I can't really get a feel from President Trump's speeches as to if there's really any progress going on with that or not. I would hope so. And seeing how President Trump has worked some of his deals with some of these countries in just the recent past, I do think that he is going to take talks seriously and give consideration to them. Right now, he's very careful to not tip his hand on anything that's going on right now, just simply because he doesn't want to lose strategic advantage, and I understand that. However, a diplomatic solution would be the way to go. We would like to see Iran enter the global markets and enter into proper and willful trade with the world. We would like to take the tension out of the Middle East. President Trump has made it very clear, even going back to his first administration with the Abraham Accords, he does have a soft spot for the Middle East. He wants to do a lot of business with the Middle East, and with Saudi Arabia pledging a U.S. investment, there's a lot to lose in that region between the Arab states and the United States. We want to work with the Arab countries. So Iran just seems to be the only kind of dissident of that, and we want to bring them to the table. And I think that's something we've been trying to do for the several months, is how do we get Iran to the negotiation table to include them into the global markets.
By the way, security advisor of the United Kingdom, he was the part of the negotiation between United States of America and Iran, and he mentioned that Iran was ready to strike a deal, and a better deal than the previously deal made with President Obama, and things were moving in a right direction, and suddenly America and Israel attacked Iran.
Yeah. I think once again, I think we can go back to the opportunity that the United States and Israel to have all of the leadership in one spot. I don't know if that opportunity really was there or not. I haven't really heard a confirmation. The White House is saying that that information isn't quite accurate. And even if you go back into Mr. Kent's, which is who I'm assuming you're talking about, when you go back into Mr. Kent's previous comments on the X platform, he even says Iran is a direct threat to the United States. So, it's tough when you have disgruntled employees leave and they want to get on, prep themselves for their book and prep themselves for the interviews across all the news outlets. They want to keep themselves relevant. So it's tough.
President Trump himself mentioned that Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and Marco Rubio, they dragged him into the war.
Yeah, I do believe that there was some influence there. I'm not going to, deny that is an option. I do believe that there was some influence there, regardless of, whether or not, whether or not I'm a President Trump fan or not. I think you can't look past that, that scenario being there. Jared Kushner obviously has a vested interest in the Middle East, and so does Witkoff. So, we can't count that aspect of it out as well.
What is the debate in the United States of America regarding historical three important goals of American foreign policy: security, economic prosperity, and the promotion of American ideals, including democracy, freedom of speech, and right of self-determination, so on and so forth. Do you think, these historical goals are served while having war with Iran?
Well, when you look, when you look at it through the humanitarian lens, just in the last 24 hours, Iran executed three young men for protesting. At least that's what's being reported in the United States. One of them was an Olympian wrestler. I have a soft spot for athletes and for them to speak out. That's your leadership. Your global athletes are your leadership. And now you're watching the Iranian people are watching one of their heroes, one of their leaders, being executed for speaking his mind. So that's a tough one to swallow for me. And and then you look back at some of the other reported executions of some of the protesters from recent past. From the humanitarian aspect, we don't like to see that here in the United States either. Is there always something that's going to get done about it? No, there's not. There's humanitarian crisis going on all over the globe. So can we isolate Iran? No. However, we already wanted to engage with them, and that situation just escalated it for us in the media here on this side of things. It's being talked about a lot here. So the humanitarian side of things is very important to Americans. We want to see people being treated fairly, even though sometimes America doesn't do it well themselves, being honest. So it is a double-edged sword. As far as our policies, President Trump has made it very clear that we are an America first country. However, the Iranian war does not on the surface appear to be America first. However, when you look at the trickle-down effect of the aftermath of what this could bring to the table, I do see where there's the opportunity for not only America to benefit from a new direction of Iran, but also everyone across the globe. A large portion of the crude oil comes through that strait. How do we make it easier? How do we keep the Houthis from harassing ships that go through that region? How do we make it easier for commerce to happen? Because those things cost companies money, and it makes it dangerous. And if we can alleviate some of the transport cost by making it safer to maneuver around those areas, it's going to make those Middle Eastern countries a lot more efficient in their transporting of oil, goods, and whatever else that they're shipping around out of that region. So there's a lot to gain from the Iranian cooperation, and so that is going to be a trickle down of America first. I know a lot of people here in America look through it through a very narrow scope and say, well, he's not doing it in the United States, so it's not America first. Well, sometimes it just takes a while for that success to trickle down to the United States. I think people are being very impatient, with things. We have to remember the pace of presidents in the past in the United States, just with our history, is we've deflected a lot, and we've had presidents say, well, we're sorry about your gas prices. There's nothing we can do about it. And then President Trump comes in and makes several deals with the major refineries and some of the countries that produce the crude oil, and all of a sudden our gas prices go down. So it just shows that I think we can't necessarily believe some of the issues we've had in the past, because President Trump has come in and changed some of those narratives and said, you can do this. They told him you can't secure the border. He did it. And now I think we're on like 6 or 7 months in a row where we've had 0 border crossings. So, some of the things we thought were impossible in the past are now becoming possible, just by having, this system that President Trump is putting together in place. Is it a perfect system? No. What system's perfect? However, I do believe that the system is a good system once it's working in conglomeration with each other.
I am not specialized on war affairs, but I was listening Scott Ritter as well as Paraveen Saini. Both believe that United States of America and Israel, they are losing war at strategic, operational, and tactical level. Even they are unable to control the media narratives, at least in the global south, at least in the global south, even in the Europe, because public opinion is not in favor of this war. So if if we assume that if United States of America with the robust military muscles and $1 trillion defense budget is unable to winning this war, how United States of America will have this trickle down positive effect on its economy and global economy, by the way?
Well, I don't believe that this conflict is going to end with Iran having the leverage that they had before. There may not be a true winner of this conflict, but I do believe that both sides will walk away with something to gain. President Trump is not known to get involved into something that there's not going to be a gain for to be gained later. So I do think that there is, and I know everybody across the globe has their own opinions on it, and a lot of it has to do with just that they just don't like Donald Trump. I understand that he's a tough character, and he went into the World Economic Forum and told everybody what to do. The Europe doesn't like those kinds of things, so he does kind of march to the beat of his own drum, and that disrupts the global normalcy that we've been accustomed to for 100 years. So I think we take it with a grain of salt when we hear some of the experts come out on things. I think President Trump, every time I've questioned him myself and said, well, these tariffs, this is going to destroy the globe, and I just said, I'm gonna wait it out, and then it turned out to be a pretty decent deal for the United States. So sometimes I just have to remind myself to sit back and just let it play out, and just observe and see what's working and what's not working, and take it from there.
Eric, Pakistan enjoys a historical relationship with United States of America, and by the way, always there is ups and downs in the relationship. But even then, we maintained connections with the American administration and even Pentagon. Our GHQ remains in touch with the Pentagon. Even during sanctions time in 1990s, General Karamat was in touch with the Pentagon officials, and even General Zinni and Armitage, who wrote a wonderful book, Battle Ready, in which they praised Pakistan arms professionalism. But now, Tulsi Gabbard, she shared intelligence report in front of Senate committee, and she mentioned that Pakistan with China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran developing ICBMs. And she mentioned Shaheen series of Pakistan's missile. Here there is alarming that why India is not mentioned, because Agni 6 has a probably range of more than 12,000 kilometers, while Pakistani Shaheen is hardly 2,500 kilometers range.
Yeah, so I'm not real sure. I mean, I saw the briefing, and I don't think this is any new news for us. We've been collecting this data and this info for quite some time. In India, I'm not real sure why they want to exclude India from that group, considering most of I believe all the parties are part of the BRICS nation, so that would include India. So I do believe that they should be included in that. Maybe it's because of President Trump's friendship with Prime Minister Modi. It could come down to that. However, I don't think we can. Everybody listed in that group has a very formidable military. They are countries that you can't just go in and invade and expect to win. They're going to fight you tooth and nail. So the countries that are building intercontinental ballistic missiles, they all should be at least watched. As far as the intelligence goes, we should be flagging India. If we're flagging people in that region that are making the IVCMs, we need to include everybody. There shouldn't be an exclusion from that list, is my opinion from that. We have had issues with India in the past, and it's not saying we won't have issues with them in the future. Obviously President Trump is trying to bridge that gap, but we can't predict the future, and that leaderships change.
Thank you very much, Eric Lamukule. You gave a time. We really enjoyed your wonderful analysis regarding war and regarding this recent report given by Tulsi Gabbard in front of Senate Committee. Thank you very much for your time. नाज़रीन, आपने सुना एरिक साहब को, सीजन जर्नलिस्ट हैं, इन्होंने हमें ज्वाइन किया अटलांटा जॉर्जिया से, और इन्होंने अपनी एनालिसिस दी है. आप इससे एग्री करते नहीं करते, अपने कमेंट्स में जरूर बताइएगा. इजाजत दीजिए. अल्लाह हाफिज.